My name is Sarahia Benn. Some of you may recognize me because I ran for state delegate in 2018. Everyone calls me the People's Champ because I support the people. I'm the legislative director of OR Baltimore City and County, executive director of Policy Foundation of Maryland, prominent environmentalist, political consultant, musician, promoter, entrepreneur, and all around activist and advocate, and host of Beats and Politics podcast. Thank you for supporting Beats and Politics Special Edition interview. It's the Disability Pride and Eye Injury Prevention Month edition number 12. And we're going to have a great time. So let's get into it. Today we have Dave Harden. Whoa, people, I want to tell you something. This is going to be a great interview. I'm going to tell you something. You guys should not sleep on Dave. Well, first thing, I'm going to read his bio. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. When I was there's just too much information to read on Dave. We would go past this interview. I'm not even joking. I don't even have to do the interview. We could just read on Dave, okay? He is that much, okay? But we're going to start off with his bio. Dave Harden grew up in a farm in Westminster, Maryland, proudly attended Carroll County Public Schools. His parents instilled in him true work ethic and the values that carried forward, for the rest of his life. His family has deep roots in the Eastern Shore as well. His great-grandmother, Lily Downey, would grow her vegetables on the shore, and then she would sell them in Lexington Market in Baltimore. After college, Dave was motivated to serve, and we're so glad, and we thank you for that, sir. So he headed off to start a school in Botswana. And I want to tell you something, Dave, that is very funny because we have a coincidence. Because I went to college and I had a best friend that came from Botswana. I mean, it is unbelievable. Joking. And so, I mean, when I saw that, I was just like, oh my goodness, man, we're gonna have to talk offline about that, to be honest with you. So, and he was a Peace Corps volunteer teacher. After years overseas, he returned home and he ended up getting and earned a master's degree at Columbia University in political science and a Juris Doctor at Georgetown University. In 1998, Dave was sworn into as a Foreign Service officer and served overseas in some of the toughest places on earth. In 2016, President Obama nominated him and the Senate confirmed him to serve as an assistant administrator for the U.S. Agency for International Development's Bureau for Democracy, Conflict, and Humanitarian Assistance. Very important stuff, people. You might not have heard of it, but I'm telling you, very important stuff. In that capacity, he led a bureau that focused on global crisis, response, and political transition. He was honored to spearhead American response to crises around the world. I mean, around the world, people. That's important stuff. Dave's family is a service family. So after the events of January 6th, which occurred while his son was serving overseas, he knew he couldn't sit back 1 minute more and allow Andy Harris in Congressional District 1 to hold the mantle of patriotism as a reason to sow division and ultimately help to incite an insurrection. Dave and his wife Sharon own a farm in Westminster where they raise honeybees, herbs, vegetables, and hay to this day. And that's just a small taste of who Dave Harden is. And let me tell you something. I'm telling you, it's just a taste, people. So I introduced the one, the only Dave Harden. Nice to meet you again. How you doing, Dave?
Well, you are indeed the people's champ, Sarahia. And I did meet you in Elkton. And I knew then that, and I know now that you are the serious champion of the people, not only for District 1, but for Maryland and the United States. So it is a great privilege for me to be here with you, sparring with the people's champ.
You are not smart. I'm going to tell you something. When I met you in Elkton, which was so great, and the funny thing is, let me just kind of rewind a little bit, people. We were at the Memorial Day parade there, and I met Dennis, who is his campaign manager, correct? And I had known Dennis from an election. I think it was in 2020. And he just came out. He's like, hey, you got to meet the guy I'm representing. I'm like, who's this? He was like, Dave Harden. I was like, I never heard Dave. And he was like, you got to meet him. And I was like, okay. So Dave comes over to me, right? And I'm like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Dave Harden. He was like, what's your name? And I was like, I'm Sarahia Benn. I'm like, I'm the people's champ. And he was like, okay. And and he was a little quiet. I was like, well, Dave, you cannot be quiet if you're gonna run for congressional one. And I was giving him advice because that's just me. I'm always gonna give advice to people because I want them to win and I want them to move forward. Because the thing about it is this: one, I'm a positive person, but more importantly, I really care about my state and I do care about my country. And I think after that day, just meeting Dave, you are a great person. You are a great personality because he was just going around meeting everybody. And I know I'm talking way too much more, but I mean, I get so excited when I think about the people that I meet and how I meet them. And Dave, I watched as the day went around. Dave had met and talked to everybody, and everybody liked Dave. And so I encourage people after this interview, reach out to Dave. He will talk to you about anything because I would definitely challenge that. So let's get into the interview a little bit, Dave. I know I'm like moving a little fast. So one thing I want to say, I started off a little bit in your bio and kind of previewed it a little bit. But everybody wants to know, what is the first thing everybody wants to know when they meet a candidate? Why are you running? So why don't you get into it that way, Dave?
All right, I will, but I want to just go back to Elkton for a second. Sarahia.
Okay, sure.
So I took great advice from you, and I just want everybody out there to know that when you're running for office, everybody gives you their opinion, right? But a lot of opinions, you can take them or leave them. But you gave me great insight, and so kind of separately outside of this podcast, we're going to talk about what I learned from you. So I just want to make and be very clear about that. So there you go. So why am I running for Congress? Yeah, I'm running for Congress. So I'm a native son, and America is in crisis. As you saw when I kind of served around the world, I represented America at some of the toughest crises of our generation. And we're facing three crises right now at home. We have a crisis of democracy. We need to protect, defend, and expand our democracy. That's number one. Number two, the economic transformations that are going to come our way over the next decade, in part driven by climate change, are going to be disruptive and big and important. And I've spent 30 years working on some of the toughest economic issues of our time, and I want to help my neighbors, our people, prepare for this next generation economy, because we will either lead it and succeed, or we will have to build and buy from those who do. So let us be the leaders. Let us be the ones who succeed. And then the third crisis that we're facing in America is that our inherent talent is being held back. We need to unleash the talent of all people in this district and in all of America. And I seek to do that in ways that are very tangible so that all people can achieve their God-given destiny and kind of live the big life that they dream of.
Awesome, Dave. I mean, I'm already sold. I mean, really, I'm already
sold. Good.
I mean, seriously, I'm gonna tell people I'm already sold. And I mean that because it's really important. I think a lot of people don't understand that as a candidate, it is a light bulb moment. It's a lot of times it's not. I think people just think like you sit back and you think, okay, I'm just gonna run. It's literally moments in time, things that happen that propel us to do this, right? It's not, it's usually not something that's well thought out at the moment. It's just something that happens, and God or a spirit or whatever's happening propels us to do this. And then the next thing we know, we're doing that. And so that was great. So you're running in the first congressional district, and we obviously know, you're qualified. I mean, because like I said, I read through a bevy of your qualifications, but the public may not know some of these qualifications, to be honest with you, Dave. So when you take that position, if you win, what would be some of the qualifications you think that qualifies you for that position? You know, what would
Yeah,
make
sure. I mean, in terms of, I mean, let's just begin with the fact that in order to win, the Democratic nominee will have to take 35,000 votes away from Andy Harris. And that will mean that the Democratic nominee has to build a big tent coalition to include progressives and moderates, independents, and even Republicans, even some Republicans. It's going to be necessary. And I have already, since I launched on May 10th, received donors and support from donations and support from Bernie people and Elizabeth Warren and of course Biden people, but also people that voted for Donald Trump and Andy Harris. They have now come over to my side, and that's going to be necessary to win. But more specifically, what do I offer? I have worked and I have thought about economics for displaced communities, communities that have been left behind, that haven't been connected to high-end markets, where people, households, families, and businesses and communities feel disconnected from the opportunities that they see all around them. That's what I did for 30 years. That's what I did starting in Botswana. But I did it for the entire time across the world. And ultimately, I decided that, while I did represent, and it was a great honor to represent the bigness of America, it was time to come home and help my people, our neighbors connect into that global economy and to seize and forge the opportunities that can come our way. And that also requires that we unleash our talent through broadband and preschool education for folks, and better vocational schools, and smarter abilities for small businesses to connect into those high value markets. So I'm all in, not only in terms of protecting our democracy, but helping forge this district and our people to meet the challenges and the opportunities of the next decade.
Awesome, Dave. That's great. So again, the public may not know so much about you, because even though there's like I said, there's a lot of information. How would you describe who you are? I mean, could you get a little bit into, like, a little bit more into who Dave Harden is outside of, you know, like what you're running for? Like, I mean, even like
Yeah.
some of your experience in Africa, like some of your foreign policy in Israel, because that is something that, maybe we could discuss maybe a little bit about. Um, you know, Go ahead.
Well, to the people's champ, I've come here a little bit casually dressed today, and that's because I was working on renovating our barn. And we're preserving some of this piece of history and culture, but I also work hard. I work hard to make sure that we provide in our communities. And I think what is best describes me is I worked in extraordinarily complex crises. And at the end of the day, you either save a life or you don't. You either feed millions of people or you don't. You either help displaced people move to safety or you don't. You either make sure that there's water and sanitation and healthcare and education, or you don't. You make sure that there are jobs or you don't. And so I broke through. I was known in the bureaucracy as a bit of a cowboy, somebody that would slice through the bureaucracy and deliver results. I really could care less about the politics of it. And I really cared about making sure that we drove a difference. And I did it with your tax dollars, right? And so at the end of the day, it's easy to keep your job and not deliver results. I mean, Andy Harris is a great example. We paid him $2 million, $2
Yeah.
million. And the results that he has given us, he's changed the name of one post office in Salisbury. But my track record over 30 years, whether it was building a school, in a junior high school in Botswana, the first of its kind in that district, to saving lives in Yemen and Syria and throughout the Middle East, and to protect American democratic values, I just produced results. And that's what I want to do if I win in Congress.
Wow. That's really prophetic what you said, because you sound more like you've been more of like an advocate activist, because, unfortunately, a lot of times our representation, they get this big check, like you basically just said, and they're really not producing those results. They're doing very little to produce results, and we do need people that produce results. So that was a very tangible point, Dave. So I'm going to quickly get into like a really fun thing to kind of release some tension a little bit. I'm going to say a word and a phrase, and I want you to give like a brief answer in response to that word or phrase. So, for instance, I'll say the word empathy, and you'll just say whatever you say for that word. So I'll say empathy.
Joe Biden.
Political powerhouse.
Political powerhouse. Me. After the 2022 election, as I start to deliver results for the people's champ and her people in MD1.
All right. COVID-19 pandemic.
Massive crisis globally and in the United States that has displaced and hurt our most vulnerable, but a big opportunity for us to reorder and think about what the decades ahead could mean for America and our place in the world.
Stat quo. Stat quo.
Not working for the people of District 1 in particular. Many people feel left behind. They feel forgotten. They don't see an opportunity. They were given legacy opportunities from their parents and grandparents, and all of this seems at risk. And what we need to do is to seize that future and to help our neighbors, our friends, change the status quo so that they can have a good future, and that their kids and grandkids can have a good future.
Guess what? You just said the testimony for my district that I currently live in, 34. It's the same thing, and I'm going to change that too. I had to just say it. Response to COVID-19 in Maryland. What do you think?
Better than most, to be honest. I mean, Maryland's results are better than most, and it could be better. And there's a lot of ways in which it could be better. And I worry about the deepening challenges of the economy. But we should acknowledge, and we should be grateful for the fact that we have vaccines, and that we've turned a corner on COVID, even though it was a very, very hard time. Much of the world is suffering, and they have months and maybe years ahead of them for continued suffering. So I do think everybody needs to take the vaccine, however, so we can stamp out the Delta variant.
Maryland leader. Maryland leader.
Well, I'm going to give you two, and both of them are going to be surprising. First will be me in 2022 when I win and I take over the House, and the House is going to be at risk. So, I don't want to be shy about that, because a lot is at stake. And Andy Harris has humiliated and embarrassed and appalled us, so he needs to leave. And then the second I'm going to talk about is a sports hero, Brooks Robinson, who was back in the 70s, and he was one of the greatest third basemen in American history. And he was an icon for many young men and women. And Brooks Robinson had a very good and close teammate, Frank Robinson. Together, they represented the best of what America could be. And I'll let you look into a little bit more detail about the greatness of both Brooks and Frank Robinson and what that meant for all of us. But it was, look, this is a down home. You either live here or you don't. You know what I'm talking about, or you don't experience. And of course, for people of a certain age like me, okay? But yeah.
Well, I'm of your certain age, but you know, the thing
Mm,
is that
mm,
I'm a big baseball
you're much
fan.
younger. You're much younger.
I'm not that much younger, actually. I'm about to turn 55, dear. Don't even go there. But
Oh, really? You look great.
yeah, well, of course I look great. I'm the people's champ. I got great genes. But but the thing is the funny thing is that I'm a big baseball fan, so we connect on a lot of ways. And so we'll have to have a
Yeah.
discussion when I do a baseball round table. You'll have to come on for that, man. Dave, I tell you, I'm thinking
Absolutely.
you just left and right. So that is a very and the funny thing, not to interrupt our discussion, we just honored in Habity Grace Ernest Burke, who was a Negro League player in Habity Grace. And so it's just
Yeah.
funny that you brought that up. And guess who was there? Al Bumbry. I don't know if you remember Al
Oh, I
Bumbry.
remember Al. Of course, I
Yes,
remember Al Bumry because he was in the
yes.
I mean, he was definitely in the 70s. He was definitely in the 70s, and he
Late
might have even.
70s and early 80s. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I absolutely remember Al Bumry. Yep,
yes,
yep,
yes.
yep, yep. That's great. And you know what? We are a good baseball town, and I do think, actually, the tracking of the Orioles, in many ways, I mean, the Orioles were such an iconic team back in the 70s, right? And we can have that future again. And it's just going to take us to be a little bit more thoughtful and kind of leading into our hopes and opportunities and talents and dreams are going to be in the
Guess
decade
what?
ahead.
Everything is about top office. I'm just going to say it that way.
You know what? That's absolutely right. That's
I'm going to say
absolutely
it
right.
that way. And you see what's
And I
happening
think
right
top
now.
office has done bad for us. Yeah.
And I'm going to say it that, and I'm going to leave it alone.
Well,
Next,
maybe afterwards we'll talk about that one too.
yes, we'll talk about that later. Two more. Policy that improves equity. A policy that you
Yeah.
think improves equity. What
Listen,
policy?
there's so many things that are needed. There's so many things that are needed, but let me just begin right off the bat. So, we need universal preschool for 3 and 4 year olds. When I grew up in Carroll County, they didn't have kindergarten. Can you imagine? They didn't have kindergarten. I didn't even learn how to read until I was 6 years old. But we
Wow.
decided, 45 years ago, that kindergarten was important, and we made that decision because we wanted our kids to be prepared. Right. So we need that for the
Sure.
third and fourth, for 3 and 4 year olds. And then on the
Yes.
flip side, we need vocational training that is much more aligned with the modern economy. So that's number one, education. Number two,
Absolutely. I
we need
agree with you.
broadband. Listen, if we don't have broadband, you can't connect, and that means families and small businesses can't and communities can't connect. And this is just basic infrastructure at this point.
Mhm.
And a lack of broadband really hurts rural communities, which tend to be poorer than urban communities. So we need that as well. Third, I would like us to do better on housing, affordable housing. Housing
Mhm.
is extremely expensive for families, and there are ways in which we can unleash both capital and opportunity that would allow working families to get a house and to save and to provide for their kids and their future. And by the way, these things all wrap together, right? If we
Yes.
have let's say we have universal preschool, you don't have to spend money on daycare, and then you can save
Hmm.
that money and be more able to buy a house and make a down payment. So these are things that we need to be able to
Right.
do um, right now. Just in terms of policing and law enforcement, I mean, listen, we need to do better. And doing better means that there's equity and justice in our law enforcement. But in
Mhm.
addition, it means that everybody goes home safely. So
Sure.
if you have if you're vaping in Ocean City, or you have a blinker that's not working, or your tail light is out, we want everybody to go home. We don't want anybody
Sure.
to be killed. We
No,
want
no, no.
and we want everybody to go home, and we want the police to go home, and we want to just
Sure.
understand that a lot of these really small nuisance matters don't rise to the level that we're seeing. And so we need just to do much better on equity across the board.
Hmm.
And equity doesn't just mean brown and black communities. I
Means
mean,
everybody.
equity means rural and urban communities too, right?
Let me
I mean,
tell
if
you,
you are black,
everybody.
brown, or white,
Everybody. I'm gonna be honest
yes.
with you, Dave. I think the hardest problem that I've had convincing certain people, and I say certain people because for whatever reason they only assume it's in the urban communities, It's everywhere, all over America. I've lived outside of Maryland, and I can tell you it's everywhere in America. And you could go from rural to suburban to urban. It's on every absolute corner of America. So I think sometimes we want to just generalize, right? But we can't generalize. We have to do better. We have ideals, right? And we want to aspire to get there, but we want to also make sure we're not just pushing ideals, and we're trying to make sure everybody gets that opportunity to access, right? And to get there.
Yeah.
And so equity can't be just one thing or one person. Absolutely. So
Right. I agree. And by
absolutely.
the way, but look, the poverty rates in rural MD1 are pretty high. I mean, when you look at
They
it both
are.
comparative to America or even around the world, I mean, we have pretty systemic poverty in parts of MD1, and MD1 is essentially rural. I mean, the biggest town is Salisbury. There's 40,000 people there, and then after that, all the towns are 10 to 15,000 people. So
Right.
rural poverty is tough. And I will tell you one other thing: the Democrats lose 90% of the rural counties in America. And part of the reason that they lose is because they aren't from these rural districts. They don't know the people. They don't speak the language and the culture. And unless we are able to really connect with rural communities and develop the policies that will lift up and create economic opportunity, then we're bound to continue to have deep poverty rates, which also creates grievances in
Dave, it's
much
about
of rural
community
America.
building. I mean, it's about community building. One of the things that I was saying in a recent meeting was that, and we were talking about like trying to help, do some outreach in Hartford, was that there is no community organizing. Everybody just thinks that they're gonna just put their name on a ballot, and people going to vote for him. It's not going to happen. You have to have some roots in there, and you have to have, like you said, you have to understand the lay of the area. And it can't be just because you say you have a good policy that people are going to vote for you, right? You have to have people that actually believe that you have a care for them, right? And
Yeah,
and part of the care is have it's showing you have a deep care. And what I think is so great about you, Dave, is that you're living in your family has lived in the Eastern Shore, in the heart of District 1 for years. You've had that
yeah,
investment in the community, and it's not something. Yeah, just yeah, you were this diplomat or whatever, but you weren't always this diplomat. You were in that community, forever, and so that's your community. People know you. People know who you are, and that's important. And that's the thing about anytime you run, that's important. And then you have to have the integrity after that. And let me tell you, it's got to be, it's got to be followed up after that. That's sometimes we can be in the community and not have the integrity, so that's another separate talk. But you know what I'm saying. But the thing is that you have to have that in community building, because the thing is, a large amount of the Democrat machine, I guess, is towards the urban, because there's more people. I think there's always more people, but we have to stop ignoring our rural and suburban areas, because there's a lot of great people we're missing out in getting,
yeah,
because I believe that they would for many years they supported Democratic policies, to be honest with you. If you want to be, they were
yeah,
union people, right? They supported,
yeah.
and so there's no reason why good candidates shouldn't be able to get that back up. And so the last phrase we're going to get into is Maryland podcast. This should be easy. This should be easy for you. I lobbed it for you. What is the Maryland podcast that you want to support?
I want to support all Maryland podcasts with neutrality and fairness to all. But if there's one that I love more than anyone else, it's the People's Champ podcast.
Okay, beats and pot. There you go. You got it right. That's the best one. You're a good one. You like to do that one. So we're gonna move on into the interview. I was watching your ad a little bit, and at the beginning of your ad and everything, because I like to look at everybody's ad. And again, this is just me. This is the what I call the consultant in me, because last year before the pandemic, and during that presidential election, I got to consult on a couple elections and campaigns, excuse me, and so I can't help, I'll see things and I'm like, ah. And so it wasn't that, some of it's on, some of it's yay. And so I was looking at your ad and I was like, wow, I am impressed, because I'm looking at this ad and then it was like, I wonder what he means by that. So I was just like, so who came up with your ad, and what did you mean by some of the thoughts and images in your ad? So I'm just going to do it that way. So you tell me what you're.
Okay, so we're talking about my launch video, and you can find my
correct.
launch video at hardenforcongress.com, and it's a 3-minute video. And I wanted to accomplish a couple of things. So first of all, I wanted to really acknowledge my deep roots in this community. And like all of Maryland and Maryland history, there's a lot of complexity to our roots. But at the end of the day, this is where we're from, and our neighbors and our friends and our communities helped define us. So I wanted to make sure I captured that in the video. Secondly, I wanted to recognize the fact that my professional life was very much one of service, where I represented America overseas, from around the world, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, and I was proud to represent America. But I also wanted it. You could imagine that there could be a disconnect, right, in rural Maryland, and then me serving abroad for 20 years all over the world. But what I really wanted to drive home to folks is that I worked on economies in really tough places, and I learned something. And what I learned overseas is what I want to bring home. And so my background is a little bit unusual in that I am a farm boy, and I was a diplomat all over the world, solving some really, really tough dilemmas of our generation. And then, the third thing is I wanted to set out the vision of what I hoped for in in this next decade. And it was primarily an economic vision where families can have jobs and create their own businesses and drive their own destinies. And that requires that, we make broadband and housing more affordable and education more affordable, but it also means that businesses work. And, I had a great conversation with a very close friend of mine on the Eastern Shore who happens to be African American. And he said to me, Dave, you know what? We don't need any more murals or basketball courts. We need small businesses on Main Street. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I worked on creating small businesses in Baghdad, and we could use some small businesses in this district right now. And so we need incubators and accelerators. We need less regulations for small startup businesses, and we need for people to be able to chart their own destiny too, right? That's when you're going to start to get equity. That's when you're going to start getting inclusion, when people have not only the political power, but the economic power to drive their futures and their kids' futures. Absolutely. And so that was the point of my launch video about where I see America going and where I see this district going.
It's highly regulated, to be honest with you, and you got a lot of medical. It's a lot of medical opportunity in District 1, but not much else. You know what I'm saying? So small business should thrive there, but it is being held back. So if you could alleviate that, I think you probably could get the nod, right?
I mean, what happens in times of crisis like COVID, right? COVID breaks down things. COVID breaks down jobs and businesses and opportunities, and it creates enormous stress. But it also creates kind of an opening for new people. Maybe they start out as at a farmer's market, selling pot pies, or maybe the oystermen who used to sell the Whole Foods now have to sell from their peer. And it creates some really interesting dynamics. And we have the people and the talent and the markets that are close enough by that would allow us to really explore and expand what is possible.
Yeah. So I know you've said a whole lot. You said a lot about your policies, but if you had a 1 minute pitch, what would it be for the people? Could you do it in 1 minute? Let me
I
see.
can do it in less than 1 minute.
Wait a sec.
Do you want to put a timer on me?
Yeah, let me put a timer on it. You ready? Here it goes.
Yep.
Here it goes. You got it.
We're going to protect our democracy and deepen it so it's inclusive for everybody and makes us a stronger nation. Secondly, we're going to build the next generation economy, and that means unleashing talent and opening up access for small businesses and for medium-sized businesses to expand and grow. And thirdly, we're going to unleash American talent, the talent of all of our people, so that they have the opportunity to achieve their God-given hopes and dreams. And together, that will make actually America great, right? That's what it will take, all of us together.
Wow, you did that in 40 seconds. Awesome.
There we go. So more results, less politics. I cede back 20 seconds to you.
He gave me all of it. He said, I cede that to you. I love that. You are a card, man. You are a card. That's why I like you. We're gonna have to meet up again. We're gonna have to talk.
We are, because I'm gonna need your advice.
Oh,
I know you gotta be like, I can't ask you. You asked me what's my favorite podcast. Okay. I know that I can't say who's your favorite candidate in MD1 because you're gonna have to say, oh, I'm gonna be fair, neutral to everybody. I understand that. You should be. But I want to tell you something. You have a voice and an instinct that has deep traction with the people of this district, and so you are a very important influencer in this community.
thank you, dear. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Well, I mean, I think you're gonna do awesome too. I tell you, you're definitely getting out there. I've seen you. I mean, I'm watching you, and I watch everybody. I know it's everybody's like, you must not sleep. I really don't. I mean, I really don't, and I'm I'm really watching what's going on in District 1 because even though I don't live in that district anymore, it just I have a lot of people that do live in the district and they're really concerned about it. And they've been concerned about it for a while. And they've been feeling like they're under a siege, to be honest with you. I'm saying even before January 6th, by the way. And it's just sort of like, so it's just I've been very concerned. So it's good to hear people are caring to run and being thoughtful, in what they're doing. And so I want to move on to another. Now, this is a deep question, and we kind of had a pre-discussion about it because I know it kind of steps on some toes when people talk about this. But like I have a lot of like deep political discussions with people, and sometimes they'll say they're strict constitutionalists, and they'll say, "Oh, I know the Constitution," and then what ends up happening when they say this to me is that they really don't know the Constitution. They rarely read it. They're usually talking about the Bill of Rights or they're talking about something else. And so my question to you, Dave, if you had any opportunity to possibly alter, add, or whatever, amend the Constitution, would you do it? And what would it be?
So thank you for asking me this question. It is a tough question. And let's begin with the fact that the threshold for constitutional change is extraordinarily high. It requires 3/4 of the states to approve and some supermajority within both the House and the Senate. And so, it's rare. It rarely happens throughout the course of our history. And the founders set it up that way because they want our foundational principles to be bedrock, and they don't want fast kind of whimsical change. So I
Right.
do want to acknowledge that it's hard to change the Constitution.
Sure.
I think the most concrete thing that needs to be done is changing Citizens United through a constitutional amendment that would change the definition of First Amendment speech to limit what corporations' First Amendment speech would have, which includes their right to use unlimited amounts of money to influence elections. And so you
Wow.
could envision kind of a narrowly tailored constitutional change that would be limited in scope to the free speech of corporations and how that affects Citizens United. Absent that, it is the law of the land through the Supreme Court.
Wow. I did not expect that. All day. Man, you always surprise me. Wow. That was great. That was a great answer. To be honest. I'm serious. I'm so surprised. Hey, people, I'm surprised at that answer. I didn't even think I thought he was going to say pass. He did not pass. He gave me a great answer. Thank you, Dave, for that answer. I'm serious. I mean, that was a great, thoughtful answer. So we're going to move on to the hot list of some current policies out of the United States House of Representatives. And if you have any policies that you hear that they're currently presenting, or any that you would want presented, you can kind of put out there. But I was just thinking, any that are out there currently that you support or would be interested if you were in the House of Representatives right now. Could you list some?
Yeah, sure. So I also want to be realistic because at the end of the day, you need results, not politics, right? And so,
Sure.
a lot of candidates are gonna list a whole host of things that are aspirational, but maybe not achievable.
Sure.
And I think what Biden is trying to do is build enough of a consensus that he can achieve results. So first and foremost, I think we need the infrastructure bill. It's called the Invest Act, but we need that now, and that's going to help rural communities on a number of different ways. But in addition, the second round of that includes support to families, the American Families Plan and the American Rescue Plan. These are things that would help families and lower the inequality that we see right now in America. So that's the second. And then thirdly, what I see out there, and that's kind of local, is that David Trump had put out some opioid legislation just in the last few days, in fact, that would help not only the nation, but Maryland's first district and Maryland kind of combat the opioid crisis a little bit better. And so, that would be something that I think hits particularly home to us in places like Westminster and in Elkton, and in parts of the Eastern Shore. And so these are kind of some concrete, achievable legislative actions that I think we could get within the next, let's say, 6 months.
Okay. I take it. I receive it. Those were good answers. Good answers. So we come to the portion of the podcast where we call really pressing issues folks want to know, Dave. And some of the really pressing issues people want to know, and these are quick hit answers. And I say quick hit.
All right.
You have a choice.
I'm going to be quick. I'm going to be like Al Bunbury. The quick hit.
That's right. Well, James Earl Jones played Darth Vader, and in The Lion King, he played Mufasa. So do you pick Darth Vader or Mufasa? Darth Vader.
Mufasa.
Ah, right, Mufasa. Girl Scout cookies, shortbread or Samoas?
Samoas.
Oh, I'm so glad because I like them better. The Maryland state song, yes, that's right. The Maryland state song was just repealed, but if you were in the position, would you been for its repeal or against it?
I would have modified it to make it acceptable and modernized for this century, for our modern times. So yeah, so I would have repealed the existing lyrics as they currently stand.
Okay, cool. Wings, flats, or drums?
Wings?
Yeah,
like what kind of wings?
Chicken wing? Hot wings.
Huh?
So you got your flat parts, or the drums?
Drums. I thought you said drones, and I was thinking of like, oh, drone warfare or something. I was wondering what we're talking about here. Drums, got it.
Hey, people, we're dealing with some technology, so it might have gotten lost
Uh-huh.
in the translation.
We might have swarm drone technology through AI that's out there.
So on TV, there was the Twilight series and The Purge. Which one? Twilight, The Purge?
Neither.
He said neither. He said, I was too busy doing foreign
Neither.
service. He was like, I was too busy doing foreign service. Okay.
I don't even know what the purge is.
It's a show purging people. That's what it is. George,
oh man, that sounds scary.
Oh, it is scary. One time this story is about one time out of the year that they would allow people to just do anything they want, commit any crime they want with full amnesty. It's the craziest show ever. But anyway, yeah. George Jetson versus Fred Flintstone. Say the right one.
Flintstones.
Yes. Yabba dabba do. Star Wars versus Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Okay. All right. This is a real tough one because I don't think you listen to this kind of music, but I'm going to say it anyway. Baltimore Club. And
how do you know? What are you doing? How do you know I don't listen to this?
I don't know, but you might. But I'm just saying you were out of the country, so you might not listen to it. Baltimore Club and house music.
Country.
Baltimore Club and house music, or DC go-go music like Chuck Brown.
Oh, you know what? I know that I'm running an MD1. I'm going to go with DC go-go music. And I'm sorry, MD1.
Okay, now we got a Maryland fight fest between two singers, JC Chasez, who was in NSYNC, versus Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart.
Tony Braxton. That's because I'm old.
You better say Tony Braxton. You better say my girl. All right. You got the crab cake bake-off, either Fadley's out of Baltimore or the crab cake from Rich's Fish and Seafood out of your own district. He's my friend out of Churchville. You better say Richards.
Okay, but wait a second. Remember, Lillian Downey used to go fishing and crabbing and growing vegetables in the in the Eastern Shore in Rock Hall and sell it all in Lexington Market. So I'm going with Fadley's in Lexington Market because that's my great grandma's recipe.
Richard's gonna get you.
I know. But I gotta go with the family roots.
Okay, but you know what?
The crab cake recipe is from the family.
Okay, I'm gonna let you slide, and Rich is gonna let you slide. But we're gonna have to have a talk about
this. All right, but we're gonna have some crab cakes together.
We're gonna have some crab cakes together. We're gonna have some talks, and we have a good time. So, is there anything else that you would like to say that nobody knows and that we haven't discussed thus far?
Well, Sarahia, the people's chant. I think you've gotten a lot out of me right now. And so there's not much that's been held back. But I would say this. If you and your listeners really care about the future of their kids and the next generation, and they want to build that big legacy for their families, then really consider me, because I am the one that has done this all over the world. And it would be my honor to bring that skill set where I've worked and kind of thought about these big issues home to help the neighbors. And we need all the help we can get because Andy Harris is backward looking. He's trying to take us to a different place in time in our history, and I'm forward looking. I'm hoping that we can build that future. And so that's the one thing I would like to leave your audience with.
Hey, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate you. You're a breath of fresh air. All the candidates are, by the way. And I just thank you for taking your time. You are a hardworking man. Clearly, I just want to let the public know that I didn't tell him. There was communication. It was my fault. I should have planned this where he was not working or anything. But he is a hardworking man, and I just appreciate him taking his time out to be able to come on my podcast so you guys can enjoy what he had to say about his platform and all the great things he's doing. So is there any place you're going to be at in the next month that people can come and meet you, see you, give shout out your website, do anything you want.
Yeah.
This is the time to do it.
Okay, so I am going to be, well, the website is hardenforcongress.com, HARDEN for Congress.com. I'm going to be at the Frederick Douglass mural unveiling on Saturday. I'm going out with the Watermen in Rock Hall, out crabbing with them on Friday. And I'll be at the Maryland Democratic Party picnic, barbecue picnic on the 18th.
You'll be there with me?
Are you gonna be there?
Of course.
Okay, good. I just sent my check-in just now. And look, I'm out all the time, and if you want to meet with me, I'll come to wherever you are. So there we are. It's been a wonderful time with your audience today, and I look forward to spending more time and eating those crab cakes and talking about Al Bumry with who? The People's
Champ. That's right. Well, thank you guys. And we appreciate you listening in and listening for more great interviews. And we're out. Talk to you later.